A quiet descends upon my kitchen, a stark contrast to the lively Thanksgiving dinner that had just ended. The remains of the feast are scattered around me. Half-filled crystal wine glasses stand abandoned on the polished granite counters. In the background, a caterer silently stacks plates, careful not to meet my gaze. My attention is fixated on my phone, my knuckles white as I clutch it. My father's voice, a cold, calculated cut, plays from the speaker. "All you do is take, Harper. You've never given this family anything that matters." The message ends, but I hit replay, letting his sharp words fill the silence once more. My breath catches in my chest, a mixture of disbelief and a growing, painful realization. All you do is take. I press my palm against the cool countertop, a small anchor to steady my shaking hands. The catering staff moves around me as if I were a statue they must navigate, their movements quiet and efficient. A sudden sharp clatter of a dropped fork makes me jump. Just 3 hours earlier, I had been arranging fresh flowers in the entryway when the doorbell rang. My stomach had tightened with that familiar mix of hopeful anticipation and deep-seated dread that always came with family gatherings. I smoothed down my camel cashmere sweater and checked my reflection in the hallway mirror, then opened the door with a smile that felt both genuine and carefully practiced. "Mom, Dad," I greeted them, stepping back to let them in. "Happy Thanksgiving." My mother swept past me, her critical eye already scanning the foyer. "Those curtains are new," she declared. "A bit dramatic for this space, don't you think?" My father simply gave a brief nod in my direction, refusing to end his phone call even as he crossed the threshold. I swallowed the initial sting of disappointment. "The caterers are setting up in the dining room. Can I get you something to drink?" Before either could reply, my sister Chloe's BMW pulled into the driveway. She emerged from the car in a cloud of expensive perfume, her perfect, salon-finished hair untouched by the brisk November air. Her husband, Mason, followed, looking hungover and unshaven, but still managing to flash his signature charming smile. Chloe leaned in to give me a near kiss on the cheek. "Harper," she said, "you look tired. Is business keeping you up?" "Business is good," I replied, deliberately omitting any mention of the all-nighter I had pulled to finalize the hotel lobby design, the very project that was paying for this entire dinner. No one offered to help as I moved back and forth between the kitchen and dining room. They sat in my living room, sipping the wine I had painstakingly selected and critiquing my artwork, while I confirmed the caterer's schedule and double-checked the place settings. When we finally gathered around the table, set with imported linens and heirloom china I had personally sourced, my father cleared his throat for a toast. A small flicker of hope ignited within me, the thought that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. "To family," he said, raising his glass. "The people who always come through when it matters most." My smile froze. His gaze swept over me without ever truly seeing me. The others nodded in solemn agreement, as though they were the ones who had saved the family home during the pandemic, as though they were the ones who had made monthly transfers to cover Chloe's divorce attorney or Mason's consistently late rent payments. "The turkey looks dry," my mother whispered loudly as I served her a piece. Later, as the dessert plates were being cleared, Chloe pulled me aside with that specific smile that always signaled a request was coming. "The boys need new hockey equipment," she began, referencing her still-pending divorce settlement. I barely registered the rest of her words. My mind was consumed by the memory of the $45,000 I had loaned my parents in the year 2020, a loan with a formal agreement drafted by my lawyer Liam, that had never once been mentioned since, much less repaid. I also thought about the lakeside cabin I had bought outright, a place I had hoped could be a family retreat, where maybe they might finally appreciate me. They used it constantly but never once offered a word of thanks. Now, standing alone in my empty kitchen, I unlock my phone and open my banking application. The list of recurring transfers stares back at me. $2,000 a month to my parents, $1,500 to Chloe, $950 to Mason for a temporary housing situation that had stretched on for 3 years. My father's voice echoes in my head again. "You've never given this family anything that matters." A single tear slips down my cheek, leaving a cool, refreshing trail that feels like a moment of absolute clarity. My finger hovers over the first recurring payment, then I press cancel. I do the same for the next and the next. With each cancellation I feel my chest loosen, my breathing becoming easier. The kitchen suddenly feels more expansive, as if the walls have subtly receded. The caterer looks at me with curiosity as a small sound escapes my lips, something between a laugh and a choked sob. "If I've never given anything," I whisper, sliding my phone back into my pocket, "then I suppose I can stop giving now." The next day, or more precisely at the break of dawn, I slide my small leather weekender into the trunk of my car before the sun has even begun to rise. The neighborhood is still asleep, with drawn blinds and porch lights casting soft puddles of yellow on empty driveways. My hands tremble slightly as I check my phone one last time, the screen a blur through unshed tears. There are 27 missed calls and 43 text messages, all from people who, it appears, need something from a woman they insist has never given. The cabin outside Portland, I murmur to myself, starting the engine. The dashboard clock reads 5:17 a.m. 3 hours after canceling those payments, sleep had become impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, my father's voice repeated itself, "All you do is take." I pull away from the Georgian colonial I had personally renovated, with its perfect symmetry and carefully curated interior that none of my family had ever truly appreciated. The tires whisper against the wet pavement as I leave Austin behind. The Texas Hill Country fades in my rearview mirror, still cloaked in pre-dawn darkness. As I drive north, my fingertips rest over my phone. One simple press of a button, turning on airplane mode, feels like a momentous declaration of independence. "Let them wonder," I whisper to myself, and the following silence is like my first genuine breath in years. By mid-morning, I cross into Oklahoma, where a light dusting of snow blankets the roadside. The familiar landscape has been transformed into something utterly foreign, a perfect metaphor for my own life. 3 days later, I find myself on the deck of a secluded cedar cabin nestled within the dense forests of Oregon. The scent of pine and petrichor fills my lungs. Only my lawyer Liam knows my whereabouts, and he has promised to maintain my secret. A thick mist hangs between the towering trees, obscuring their tops, a mirror of the mental fog that is finally lifting from my mind. I open my sketchbook on the rough-hewn table, my pencil moving across the page without conscious thought. Designs emerge that are unburdened by client demands or family expectations, just pure, unadulterated creativity. For the first time in years, I sleep soundly through the night. Back in Austin, my phone, silently charging on the kitchen counter of my empty house, collects their panic like a digital confessional. "Harper, my car payment bounced. Call me immediately." Chloe's voice is shrill and indignant, as if my money were an inherent right. "Hey sis, something weird happened with my rent. The landlord's threatening eviction. Need to talk as soon as possible." Mason's forced casualness barely conceals his alarm. "Harper, Beatrice, this isn't funny. The mortgage notifications say we're late. Call us back this instant." My mother's voice breaks on the final word. Their messages pile up, a clear progression from demand to confusion, then to anger and finally fear, as their sense of entitlement faces its first true challenge. I lose track of time in my woodland refuge. I hike until my muscles ache and sketch until my hand cramps. I sit by the fireplace, captivated by the hungry, ever-changing dance of the flames. On my last morning, 3 weeks after my escape, I stand at the cabin's large picture window, watching an eagle circle above the pines. I've already booked this cabin for several more weekends throughout the coming year. It is my escape hatch, my designated space to breathe. "I'm ready," I tell the eagle, although it cannot hear me through the glass. The journey back to Texas feels different. The land no longer feels like something I am leaving behind, but something I am consciously choosing to return to. My hands feel relaxed on the steering wheel, and my shoulders, which have been hunched up to my ears for years, finally drop. I arrive home after midnight. My house welcomes me with familiar scents of polished wood and a faint, spicy potpourri I created myself. I water my neglected plants and run my fingers over the spines of the books on my shelves, all of which are mine, chosen with great care. Morning light streams through the east-facing windows, illuminating golden dust motes in the air. I stand in my kitchen, my palms warmed by a mug of coffee, and turn off airplane mode. My phone immediately begins to convulse with hundreds of notifications, text messages, voicemails, and emails, the digital equivalent of a temper tantrum. The final one is a voicemail from yesterday from Chloe. "They repossessed my car today," her voice breaks. "Right in front of the boys. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? What kind of sister are you? I set my coffee down and send a single text to the family group chat. I thought I never gave this family anything. The responses are instantaneous. Where have you been? How could you do this to us? We've been worried sick. Is this some kind of breakdown? Not a single message contains the word, sorry. I call Liam's office and schedule a meeting for the following day. Then I silence my phone once more and walk to my design table. Sunlight pours across the surface, illuminating the sketches I brought back from Oregon. These designs are untainted by obligation or expectation. I run my fingers over the paper, feeling the subtle indentations left by my pencil's hardest strokes. These designs are mine and mine alone, born from silence, space, and a feeling that is dangerously close to freedom. My father's voice still echoes in my mind sometimes. All you do is take. But now I hear the unspoken meaning behind those words. His fear that I might finally stop giving. I pick up my pencil and add a final, bold, unwavering line to my sketch, the foundation of everything that is to come. The next day, the landline in my office rings for the 7th time that morning. I watch the cord sway with each shrill ring, making no move to answer it. My assistant, Zara, appears in the doorway, her silver-rimmed glasses catching the light. Your mother again, she says, her voice gentle yet firm. Do you want me to tell her you're in a client meeting? I nod, turning my attention back to the hotel lobby sketches spread across my drafting table. The Sterling project is the largest contract of my career, a complete redesign of their downtown Austin property with 60,000 square feet of possibility. And Harper. Zara lingers. Mason's downstairs in the lobby again. The pencil in my hand snaps. I carefully set the broken pieces down, controlling my breathing the way Liam had suggested during our last meeting. Tell him I'm unavailable, I say, straightening my spine. And that if he shows up at my office intoxicated again, I'll have security escort him out. Zara nods, her eyes softening with a mix of concern and admiration. 3 weeks have passed since I canceled the payments. 3 weeks of escalating panic from my family. 3 weeks of discovering my own backbone. 20 minutes later, the elevator times its arrival downstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of Mason's voice rising in volume. I press my palms against the cool surface of my drafting table. You can't keep avoiding us, his words carry clearly through the open office layout. Mom needs her medication. Do you even care? My hands tremble slightly, but I wait for the familiar wave of guilt that usually follows any family confrontation. It does not come. The low rumble of the security guard's voice was followed by the abrupt ding of the elevator doors shutting and then silence. My phone buzzed on the tabletop, displaying the 3rd message from Chloe since morning. Mom's blood pressure is through the roof because of you, the text read. Hope you're happy playing the victim while your family suffers. I turned my phone over, setting its screen down, and got back to my drawings. The irony was not lost on me. My family life was falling apart, yet my career was flourishing. Just yesterday, the owners of the marquee gave their approval to my initial designs without a single change, something that had never happened before. The door opened abruptly without a courtesy knock. Liam entered the room, his leather briefcase swinging gently at his side. He put a folder on my desk without speaking. They're contesting the cabin deed, he stated as he loosened his tie. They are claiming you bought it under false pretenses as a property for the family, not a personal one. I let out a mirthless laugh. False pretenses? I have emails where they specifically requested a lakeside house with at least 4 bedrooms. Liam took a seat in the chair opposite my drawing table. They're also spreading a story that you are having some kind of breakdown. I savored the word breakdown, associating it with my decision to stop paying their expenses. Your cousin Grace contacted my office this morning, Liam mentioned, observing my reaction. She wanted me to know that your parents have been telling the rest of the family that you are mentally unstable. My stomach tightened. Grace and I were very close growing up before physical distance and the responsibilities of our adult lives drew us apart. The idea of her being exposed to these falsehoods caused a pang in my chest. What did she say? I inquired, my voice sounding more timid than I wanted. Liam's face broke into an infrequent smile. She said, and I will quote her precisely, "Tell Harper that it's about damn time she stopped carrying them." Something inside me relaxed. Someone could see my situation, someone finally understood. My phone vibrated with another text, a message to the family group chat from my father. Your behavior is destroying this family, the message read. We have always supported your little design business. Is this how you repay us? I scoffed at the term little design business. It was the very business that had paid their mortgage for 2 years, paid for Chloe's divorce lawyer, and kept a roof over Mason's head. I slid the phone across the desk to Liam. Add this to the evidence folder, I instructed. He nodded and put it into his briefcase. The 90-day notice was delivered just yesterday. They have until the 15th of March to pay back the loan. The 15th of March, 12 more weeks until I get what is owed to me. I mentally envisioned a calendar, counting down the days until I could reclaim what was mine, not only the money but my self-respect. They will escalate this, I stated, not as a question but as a definitive fact. You can count on it. Liam stood up, adjusting his jacket. Have you thought about staying somewhere else until all of this blows over? Your address is a matter of public record. I nodded and we began formulating a plan. About 2 hours later, Zara returned, her face looking strained. Chloe is downstairs with her children, she reported. The receptionist says the boys are running around in the lobby, pulling fabric samples from the walls. My nieces being used as emotional ammunition. I felt a genuine pang of sadness, missing their sticky hands and their smiles with missing teeth, but employing children as pawns was a boundary I had not expected them to cross. Please have security ask them to leave, I said, my voice remaining level despite the turmoil in my stomach. Tell Chloe that she can schedule an appointment if she needs to talk with me on a professional basis. Zara nodded, then left the room to place the call. Liam looked at me thoughtfully. You are proving to be much stronger than they anticipated, he commented. The praise made me uneasy. All I ever wanted from my family was not strength but fairness and respect. I simply wanted them to recognize my efforts. My computer chimed with an email notification. The subject line made me gasp. Urgent. Mom in hospital, your fault. I closed the laptop without even opening the message. This was just another attempt at manipulation. Last week it was my dad's heart palpitations. The week before that it was Mason's pending eviction. If they actually needed the money for a medical emergency, they could sell their boat, I said, speaking more to myself than to Liam. That was the boat they purchased after I paid for their new roof. Liam's phone rang. He checked the screen and winced. It's your father, he said. The 4th time today. Block the number, I told him, turning back to my designs. All of them. Once Liam had gone, I went to my office window and looked out over downtown Austin. The winter sun reflected off the glass buildings, forming shifting patterns of light and shadow across the city below. For a brief moment I saw the world as a set of designs with clear lines, deliberate spaces, and a purpose behind every part. My family had none of these things. No clean lines. No deliberate spaces. Just demands that grew larger to fill every resource I gave them. My phone vibrated again with a text from an unknown number. It was my mother, using another person's phone. Your father and I gave you everything, the text read. We made sacrifices for your education, and this selfish behavior is how you choose to repay us. I placed the phone inside my desk drawer and closed it with a firm push. The calendar hanging on my wall showed today's date with a red circle drawn around the 15th of March, which was the foreclosure date if they failed to pay back what they owed. It was not just about money but about respect, recognition, and the truth. I returned to my designs, my hands holding steady as I altered the line of a curved wall, making a place for light to enter from a new direction. The day of the auction arrived. I straightened my silk blouse in the rearview mirror, a simple cream-colored piece with no decorations. My actions today would make the statement, not my clothing. The sign for the auction was reflected in my windshield as I drove onto the familiar street from my childhood. The morning light created long shadows over the perfectly maintained lawns, the type of neighborhood where people pretend they are not looking while they are observing every single thing. My morning routine had been very deliberate. Strong black coffee, 15 minutes of breathing exercises, and a reassuring phone call from Liam to confirm that every legal angle was covered. The spare key to my parents' house sat left behind on my kitchen counter, a small brass object symbolizing the broken bonds. Are you sure about this? Liam had inquired. I have never been more certain of anything, I had replied, my voice sounding more steady than it had any right to be. As I turned into the familiar driveway, my resolve wavered for the first time since Thanksgiving, not due to a change of heart, but because of the scene unfolding before me. My entire family was gathered, creating a human barrier in front of the auction sign as if they were troops defending a fortress. My father stood in the middle, his shoulders squared in the same intimidating stance he had used against mortgage brokers and car salespeople for years. My mother was next to him, a handkerchief clutched in her hand, her eyes red and filled with accusation. Chloe stood with her arms folded, her perfect hair held back by designer sunglasses. Mason, with a hollow look in his unshaven face, had his hands shoved into the pockets of jeans that I knew were bought with my money. Across the street, Mrs. Morgan was tending to her geraniums with an almost suspicious level of focus. The Thompsons slowed their morning walk to an unhurried pace. I parked my car, shut off the engine, and sat for a moment in the silence. The interior felt like the calm center of a hurricane, the last moment of peace before I stepped into the maelstrom they had organized. My father walked quickly toward my vehicle before I could even get out. "What do you think you are doing?" he demanded. "I am doing exactly what the certified letter explained I would do," I replied. I closed the car door with a quiet click that echoed like a gunshot in the morning stillness. "Your mother has not slept in weeks," he said, lowering his voice to the personal tone he always used for family shaming. "Is this truly what you desire? To destroy the very people who raised you?" A laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it, a sound so strange that Chloe flinched. "Raised me or used me?" I asked. My mother came forward, using her handkerchief to dab at tears that were not there. "We gave you everything, Harper. A beautiful home and good schools." I finished the thought for her. "Along with mounting debt and impossible expectations," I continued, "which brings me to my next question. How is that $45,000 loan repayment coming along?" My father's expression changed, his anger fading into something oily and calculating. "Sweetheart, we have always been in support of your little design business," he said. "Do you remember how proud we were when you received that first large contract? The one you told Uncle Robert was only offered to me because the client wanted to sleep with me?" My words came out like a series of sharp blades. "Yes, I remember that." "You're taking things out of proportion," Chloe cut in, moving closer. "Sometimes people and families say things they do not truly mean. So, you did not mean it when you told your divorce lawyer that I would cover all of your legal fees indefinitely?" I took out my phone and scrolled to find the specific text. "Let me quote you precisely. Harper is good for it. She is always good for it." Mason finally spoke, his voice cracking slightly. "We always had faith in your dreams." "No," I countered. "You had faith in my bank account. You believed I would never stop giving you money." I stood straighter, feeling taller with every word. The auctioneer's car appeared at the end of the street, followed by 3 other vehicles I recognized from the inspection day. These were potential buyers. My father lowered his voice to a menacing whisper. "You will regret this for the rest of your life," he threatened. I took a printed transcript of his Thanksgiving voicemail from my purse. The paper fluttered slightly in the morning breeze as I held it up. "All you do is take Harper. You've never given this family anything that matters." I read his own words back to him, each syllable a precise act of retribution. "I am simply honoring your assessment," I explained. My mother began to cry loudly, a performance that belonged on a community stage. Chloe rushed to comfort her, all while glaring at me with her eyes. "My children will never know their aunt after this," she vowed. "I will make sure of it." The auctioneer walked closer, holding his clipboard and nodding in a professional manner at the family scene. "You do not get to threaten me any longer," I said, my voice sounding unfamiliar to me, steady, clear, and unyielding. "You did not see me when I gave everything away. You do not get to see me now that I am taking it all back." I turned to face the auctioneer and offered him my hand. "Mr. Davidson, I believe that we are ready to begin," I stated. 3 months later, I was standing in the middle of an empty adobe-style home, with my footsteps echoing against the terracotta tiles. Morning sunlight streamed through the bare windows, creating golden rectangles on the empty walls. The realtor observed me from the doorway, giving me room to take in every small detail. "The former owners kept the original Vegas," she mentioned, gesturing toward the exposed wooden ceiling beams that were hundreds of years old. My fingers traced the coarse texture of a wall. Santa Fe was located 700 miles away from my previous life in Austin, a distance that was more than just a matter of geography. The courtyard gets wonderful sun in the afternoon, the realtor went on. It's perfect for having coffee or for reading. I stepped outside into the small walled patio. A wind chime made a soft light sound. The Sangre de Cristo Mountains rose as a purple shape against the horizon, like ancient observers of countless new beginnings. I will take it, I said. The realtor looked at me in surprise. Are you sure you do not want to see the other properties I arranged for you? I shook my head. This one simply feels right. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from her in a notary's office, signing documents for a home that was half the size of my house in Austin. Each signature felt like releasing another heavy burden I had been carrying. When the last document was finished, the realtor handed me a single key. Congratulations, she said. It is a beautiful home. No, I gently corrected her. It is in the process of becoming one. That night, I unpacked only what I truly needed. A small suitcase, my drafting table, and one box of important kitchen items. The rest of my belongings stayed in storage until I could decide which parts of my old life deserved a place in my new one. I set up my drafting table by the biggest window and fastened a new sheet of paper to the surface. As the sun went down, coloring the mountains in shades of pink and orange, I drew my first design sketch in Santa Fe, not for a client but for myself. The simple action of putting a pencil to paper sent a wave of peace through me that I had not experienced in years. My phone vibrated with a text from Liam. Your parents moved into the West Side apartments yesterday, a 2-bedroom, Chloe helped them. I placed the phone down, choosing not to reply. Another message arrived shortly after. It was from Mason. Mason took a job at Harrison Construction, full-time with benefits. The corner of my mouth turned up in a faint smile, not out of satisfaction with their new situation, but because my family was finally facing the unyielding yet crucial lessons of reality. My cousin Grace called the next week. I answered while in the middle of unpacking books in what would become my small home office. Mom told me everything, she said. The auction, Santa Fe, every single thing. I paused, a design book held in my hand. And? I asked. And I am bringing homemade bread when I come to visit next month, she replied, her voice warming with affection. Unless you would prefer some wine? Both, I answered, a genuine laugh surprising me as it came from somewhere deep inside. Both it is, she said. Clients began contacting me even before I had listed my new address on my website. Word gets around quickly in design circles, and within weeks my schedule was booked with consultations. These projects felt different. They were chosen for their creative merit, not for their capacity to finance family emergencies. One evening, as I was hanging a series of architectural prints in my bedroom, my phone chimed with an email alert. The subject line simply read, "From Chloe." I sat on the edge of my bed holding my phone, my thumb hovering above the screen. For several minutes, I focused on my breathing to calm the whirlwind of emotions her name still stirred up. Then I opened it. I get it now. I'm sorry. The message contained just 6 words. No explanations. No excuses. No requests. Just 5 words that had arrived many months too late. I read the words a second time. Then a third. Tears blurred my vision as I placed the phone on my nightstand. It wasn't because her apology fixed anything, but because it confirmed what I already knew. Leaving was the right choice. Instead of replying, I moved the email to my archives. This was not done out of anger, but because those 5 words were part of her personal journey, not my own. My own healing did not depend on her understanding, though a part of me hoped she would find her own path. The decision regarding the cabin was made a few weeks later. I drove up for a weekend, using the key to open the door to a mix of beautiful and painful memories. Family photos still hung on the pine-paneled walls, capturing the smiling, carefully posed illusion we had maintained for years. I took each photograph down and stacked them neatly in a cardboard box. In their place, I hung framed inspirational quotes about courage and change. By Sunday afternoon, the cabin felt different, its new purpose made clear. On the drive back to Santa Fe, I began calling women's business networks to discuss hosting retreats for female entrepreneurs rebuilding their lives. From Family Hideaway to Phoenix Workshop, my first client said when she saw the space, "That's perfect symmetry." The cabin that once held my family's sense of entitlement now provides refuge for women learning to rise. Sometimes true healing is found not in what we hold on to, but in how we change what once broke us. Exactly 1 year later, Harper stood without shoes on her Santa Fe patio, watching the sunrise color the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in amber and rose. She wrapped her hands around a ceramic mug, feeling the warmth of it sink into her palms. There was no phone buzzing in her pocket, no nervous tension in her stomach. "You look so peaceful," Liam said, leaning against the doorframe made of adobe. Their relationship had shifted from lawyer and client to a friendship, and then into something that neither of them was in a hurry to define. He wore faded jeans and held his own mug of coffee, his presence a comforting addition to her space. "I am," Harper answered simply. Inside, her home was a reflection of her changed life. It was smaller than her Austin house but filled with purpose. A handmade rug from a local artist was the centerpiece of her living room. Copper pendant lights cast warm circles of light onto her drafting table, where blueprints for the Women's Business Retreat Center awaited final approval. The doorbell rang. "That must be Zaret," Harper said, walking softly across the cool tile floor. "She is bringing the birthday cake." Her former assistant had followed her to Santa Fe and was now a junior partner in their growing firm. Grace, her cousin and unlikely supporter, came in behind Zaret, her arms filled with wildflowers. "No one celebrates birthdays like a person who spent decades making everyone else's special day perfect while ignoring their own," Grace announced, setting the flowers on the kitchen counter. A laugh, which had been rare for Harper, now came easily and freely. By the evening, her patio was lit up with the gentle glow of string lights and candles. 8 people gathered around her table. These were friends who understood her story, who had never requested more than she was able to give, and who brought food and helped to clean up without being asked. "Before we cut into this masterpiece," Zaret said, gesturing toward the simple lemon cake, "I want to propose a toast to our birthday girl." Harper prepared herself, a habit from her past life. "To the woman who taught me that a giving nature without limits is not true generosity," Zaret continued, raising her glass. "And who showed me that walking away is not a sign of failure. Sometimes, it is the most courageous choice a person can make." To Harper, the others responded in unison. A feeling grew in her chest, not pride but a quiet sense of acceptance. Later, as only Liam remained helping to put dishes in the dishwasher, Harper's phone screen lit up with a notification. A message from Chloe, her annual attempt at contact, arriving precisely on schedule. "You do not have to read it," Liam said, observing her slight hesitation. "I am aware," Harper said, putting the phone away without opening the message. It was not out of anger. That emotion had faded away completely many months before, but out of a deep feeling of certainty. Some doors stay permanently closed not because a person holds a grudge, but because they have discovered more peaceful places to be. The following morning, Harper drove to the cabin retreat center. What used to be her family's weekend escape now provided a home for women rebuilding lives that had been broken by circumstances or their own decisions. A sign at the entrance declared, "Your worth is not measured by what you give away." A young designer named Serena was waiting on the porch, a portfolio held tightly against her chest. Harper recognized the desperate need for approval in the younger woman's eyes. "My parents believe interior design is just glorified shopping," Serena said quickly as they sat down. "They want me to go to law school instead." Harper gave her a nod. "Please show me your work first," she said. "After that we can discuss your parents." After looking through Serena's impressive portfolio, Harper poured them each some iced tea. "People often confuse being useful with being loved," she stated plainly. "I spent 3 decades trying to gain approval by giving up parts of myself. But true love sees you even when you stop providing things for others." Serena then asked, "Did your family ever come to understand this?" Harper responded with a small smile. "That was never the point of the whole exercise," she said. As the sun began to set, Harper sat by herself on the cabin's dock, her feet just touching the surface of the water. While silence had once meant she was being silenced, it now represented a profound peace. Her phone stayed inside the cabin, and any unread messages were no longer a source of stress. "I built my life on silence," she said quietly to the lake's surface, "not because I had nothing to say but because what I finally did say held weight."